I hereby call this committee of the whole meeting to order. This evening we have one item on the agenda, and that's the discussion about an ordinance amending ordinance number 672021 and 172022 by adding an administrative specialist and declaring an emergency. Mr. Reed?
Thank you, sir. Can you give us just a brief overall description of exactly where we're adding this and how we're paying for it? Just for people watching.
Sure. Currently, well, as you know, our secretary works 25 hours a week, and the secretary that we had resigned. We have a young lady now that's working in human resources that works 15 hours. So we had thought that, and that's why I have Noah here tonight if we have any questions about it, but what we wanted to do is have that person as working here 40 hours a week. We have someone here all the time, because as you know now, they're here 5 hours a day, so there's times where someone may come up if they're not, there's no one in the office. So I think Mr. Stith had written that ordinance.
Oh, okay.
And I think conversation with him that and with Mr. Hamrick and with Noah, that that's the direction that we would like to go in, is to have that individual working 40 hours a week here at City Hall.
So just to respond, thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, Mr. President. So I think in talks with Mr. Stith, he thought at first this was a good idea, but then there was some changes made to it or something. I'm not exactly sure, and I haven't really seen the final draft. But as far as he was concerned, that the changes basically voided his recommendation. So I'm not sure if the changes are there still or not. I'm not really sure. And so I guess the last time I spoke with Mr. Stith was that if those changes were still there, then basically his recommendation is to just disregard this. So there was also some, not to play on my hand at once, but there was also some talk about could be some, how I want to word it, conflict of interest with a full-time position being in the clerk of council, and as far as our elected official actual clerk of council. So there could be some conflict of interest that I see if we have a full-time secretary versus we have an elected official in that office. So in my opinion, that elected official gets to choose who he or she would like to work with. So once you take that away from him or her, then I see conflict of interest and problems, and maybe I'm the only one that sees that. So is there any other response to that? Thank you.
Well, maybe it'd be best if I just read the ordinance real quick.
Okay.
And then we all have it, and we can go from there. So the ordinance amending ordinance numbers 67-2021 and 17-2022 by adding position and establishing salary range for an administrative specialist and declaring an emergency. Whereas council desires to provide for a newly appointed position and to establish a salary range for that position within the city of Norwood. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the council of the city of Norwood, state of Ohio, section 1, the following non-union unclassified position and salary range within the city of Norwood is added to the positions and salary ranges ordained in ordinance number 67-2021 and 17-2022. Administrative specialist, and the salary range listed here is $30,800 to $40,000 per year. From this day forward, the range specified in this ordinance shall be adjusted as council determines and specifies in future ordinances for that purpose. Section 2, the mayor of the city of Norwood, with the approval of council, is the hiring authority of the administrative specialist position. Section 3, this position will be hired at the lowest rate except when qualifications, expertise, and educational background dictate otherwise. The hiring authority has the discretion to negotiate with applicants up to 10% above the lowest rate as deemed necessary to hire qualified staff. Any positions that require a higher start rate over the 10% discretion amount will require council's approval before the start date of the new hire. Section 4, benefits for full-time employees herein, such as but not limited to vacation, holiday, sick leave, terminal leave, on-duty injury, and medical coverage shall be the same as those outlined in the current policy and procedure manual. Pardon me, these employees who are considered exempt under the Fair Labor Standards Act are not entitled to overtime or compensatory time. Section 5, this ordinance shall supersede any other ordinances and/or parts thereof that are in conflict with this ordinance. Section 6, this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency ordinance and measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall go into effect forthwith so the city can provide the services to be provided by the person to be appointed to this position as soon as possible.
Mr. Miracle, if I
Yes,
could?
sir.
Okay. Just to get back to answer more of your question of what was going on. So we got the request from Mr. Stitt. There have been discussions for a while. Wait, why don't we make this a full-time position? It's hard to fill the clerk of council's office. We'll make it one full-time position. We got a request from Mr. Stitt at the law department that requested a position appointed by the mayor. And Tim, as we often do, if there's something that affects more than one department, we will send it to the other departments it affects to say, hey, does this work or is it going to mess it up? But I knew everybody was in a hurry, so, hey, we want to make sure we're all on the same board instead of coming back. So we heard back from Mr. Gears that, no, that should be appointed by the mayor with the approval of council. And so Tim changed that, and that's what went out with your packets. I think it was the day of the council meeting, Mr. Stitt saw the change in the ordinance. That's not what I requested. So what you actually had on the agenda, I had other versions back to the original version where it's just appointed by the mayor. And so that's kind of the issue is that there's two different versions of it. The one big issue is, do you want it to be a full-time position that does both jobs? And we have had like cross positions that do that. I mean, the law secretary did that for a while. The clerk of council has always done work for the Civil Service Commission and the Plumbing Board. And the question is, that's one question, is do you want to set up a position that does that? The pay rate is the bottom full-time pay rate for anybody that works in the city. That's $15 an hour. That's what that is. The second question is who's the appointing authority? Is it the mayor with the approval of council? Is it council? Is it the mayor? And I know Mr. Gears has opinions. The mayor has opinions. If I was on council, I would have opinions, but I'm not on council. Whoever you appoint, whoever gets appointed to this job will work for the clerk's office. And if it's the version originally requested, it will be appointed and conceivably disciplined and fired by the mayor. If it's the version that you actually got, it would be, the appointment anyway would be with council's authority. I will say this, if it's something that doesn't work out because it's legislation, the ordinance can be changed. So, you know. But that's the question before you right now. And I know everybody's in a hurry to figure this out, especially Mr. Gears, to get somebody in the office to do the work that needs to get done. So that's how we got here, and those are the kind of the issues in front of you.
So why couldn't we? Can I respond to that real quick? Sorry. So just so you gave us two scenarios there, one before us and one. So, but there's a third one, right? If we don't do anything, it stays the way it is. Am I correct on that? If we don't do anything, it stays the way it is. You have the authority to hire. We approve, and it stays the way it is. Am I correct on saying that?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
Wait, why couldn't we just, instead of doing the mayor appointed, approval of the council, why not president of council appointed with approval of council and just do it that way?
In theory, you could, but this person also works for the administration. So also works in the Human Resources Department. So that's one of those.
Well, we have a clerk. We have a clerk that's elected, or appointed, I'm sorry, appointed. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's something to be said about that, but, go ahead.
Council members should talk first.
Mr. Johnson? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Hoover, you had your hand up?
I just wanted clarity, that right now the ordinance is the mayor appoints and council approves. That's that's the one we're currently discussing, correct?
Yes, and section 2, the mayor of the city of Norwood, with the approval of council, is the hiring authority of the administrative specialist position.
And it's about 70% HR, 30% council?
I think it's 60/40, but yeah.
But
60/40 which?
25, no,
25 hours for council.
council,
15 for.
15 for HR.
Okay, so more council.
more
Okay.
council.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct, Mr. Thompson. So-
Yeah, okay, so, to me, I honestly, I don't have a problem with the shared position, but I do think council should have some kind of say over the position, because the majority of their time will be spent on council duties, and I would assume that a majority of their pay would come from a council key. As a result, I'm fine with the way that this particular ordinance is written, because it still gives the mayor the ability to do the interviewing and hiring, but we get a say over that too. What's different about that is typically we would let the clerk actually do the interviewing and hiring, so it is removing that from the clerk's ability to do or influence. I mean, for me, as long as council gets some kind of say in the final hiring of whoever it is, I'm kind of okay with it.
Well, not to get like too deep in the weeds of it, but like, wouldn't we be able to write something in where whoever the clerk council is can be in the interview process, give their opinions? You know, is that something that would need to be written in, or just understood, or? Like, how would that?
Here's my thing. There could be, I mean, in our climate, we don't agree, we could, the possibility of a, Republican mayor and a Democrat council, and vice versa. I see a conflict of interest there. So we have to be able to work with this person, and it's also one of our rights, one of your rights as well as mine, if you win that council, if you win majority, then that is that's what you basically are winning that. So you're taking that away and I have an issue with that. And I also see a conflict of interest there, because if they don't get along, if those people don't get along in that office, I see a bad situation occurring. So if there's not cohesive existence between those two people, I see a problem. So I don't particularly care to take it away from the clerk and the council, so personally.
Well, so with that, I see your point there, but it also, to me, this almost sounds like there's a possibility for some, bipartisan work here to be had, like, to come together and decide on something like that. I mean, it could also be a good
You
thing.
give a lot of credit. Give a lot of credit.
I mean, I know.
You know what I mean? I mean, I totally
it's a
agree. I'm
loose-
not disagreeing that we should be able to do that, but I don't know, I don't see.
It's a loose
I mean,
statement, I understand what
With the
you're saying.
last council we had,
But, I'm comfortable with having a vote on it, I mean, I would like something written into the clerk council as a part of the interview process, and can give their opinion to council, and, hey, I do recommend this person, I don't recommend this person. I think that kind of helps shore things up as well on our behalf.
I think we scratch it, we keep it the way it is, personally. That's my opinion.
I was going to speak for Mr. Gears, but he's here, so why don't you go ahead and...
So, just to clarify some of this, there is already a person who is kind of agreed upon to move into this role. So there's someone already in the HR side, that HR aspect of the position, who would move into this position. Ken, myself, and Keith had lunch with her, when was that? Early December, I think?
Sometime around there.
Somewhere around there. But yeah, as far as the fear of cohesiveness, I have no issues with this individual. I would support her moving into that role. Actually, I encourage moving forward to put her into this position. And the only reason I requested that the approval of council be added into this is because of the role that you all have, and historically, council appoints not only my position, but indirectly the secretary to the clerk of council as well. So all that does is basically the sign-off of council to approve whoever the mayor moves into that position.
Mrs.
I totally understand your point, but in my experience in working with the last secretary, it didn't feel like there was really partisan issues. She wasn't creating legislation, she was just getting paperwork and filing things, and so for me, it would have to be someone who's blatantly trying to undermine the system, and if that were the case, I would feel very comfortable going to the mayor and saying that that's the case, and I feel like disciplinary action, yada, yada. But from my working with the previous secretary, Lisa, I have no idea if she was a D or an R or an I, or if she voted. I have no idea. What matters to me about someone in that role is, are they reliable? Are they going to do what they say they're going to do? Are they going to show up? Are they going to get the stuff done? And for me, that transcends, that's irregardless of their party affiliation. So.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's probably the way it should be. But I don't think that's the reality we live in, and also, and I appreciate you, Mr. Gears, you know, I get it, but what happens when we get majority back, what happens when we get majority back, Mr. Couch, and it's our decision to, and then Mr. Gears, or maybe we have someone else up there, maybe they don't get along. So I understand you get along, and you're telling me that you approve of this, and I have no issues with that. But what happens next time when it's our turn, and we don't approve of it?
Absolutely.
I disagree. So I'm going to say no, that I don't like this.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying there as far as, you know, it sounds like this wrote somebody into a full-time position regardless of who sits in that chair, these chairs, or whatever, and we can vote on it again when they decide that they're done with the job versus it working the way it has in the past. So I do agree with that fully.
Well, like I said, it's nice everybody's all, you know, kumbaya right now, but I can see a position, a situation where this is not going to be. So I just want to prevent that, and I think I like the situation now. So I would urge us to squash this and move on, but, you know, hey, I'm one vote, so, you know, do what you guys have to do. I don't agree. I don't think it's a good idea, but that's just one guy's vote. So I appreciate it if you guys would go along with me.
Ms. Weiss?
Well, my understanding is, right, if this person leaves, we pass another ordinance or resolution, and that can be changed, right? Or no? If this person, is that what Keith said? That the thing, would be, if this would keep it?
If it turns out we don't like the system, we can write a new one.
Right.
But not if she gets another job and leaves.
So what happens in this instance
Well,
where?
because we're rewriting it now after Lisa left. So my understanding was procedurally.
Well, here's what I think we got to look at.
No,
This is
okay.
new.
This is, okay.
Here's what I think we got to look at. I think what Mr. Braden's getting to, correct me if I'm wrong, that I agree with is, so say we get a new council that's coming up. Next year, we're going to get a new council. Say they want to go a different way from Mr. Gears. Say that person wants their own secretary. Is that power still there to say, hey, we want to get somebody else, sorry?
They'd have to write a new resolution.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, you bring up a very good point, and that's, and speaking politically, I think it's the absolute worst way to look at this thing. We have made changes over the last 3 years, 4 years, we've made changes because we recognized we need to run this city better, much more effective and efficiently. And we've tried to put things in place, and you guys have been instrumental in it. We've tried to put things in place that are sustainable and make the city continue to work through. It doesn't matter who's sitting in the mayor's seat, who's sitting in council seats, it continues to thrive and continues to go, and we're able to provide the services to the residents. The concern here, and the reason why you're talking about the auditor, the city's auditor brought this out. Why would the auditor bring anything out about this at all? You would think it doesn't matter at all, but it's a critical position because you guys pass all these financial things, right, that have to go to the county and have to go to the state. And we're lucky that we've got Joe Gears Jr. working for us right now. But if we have a different clerk of council that doesn't it's an elected position or appointed position by the council, it doesn't really understand it all because it's politics, you know, we're a statutory city, then it becomes a real challenge for the whole organization, the whole administration, the auditor's office, the treasurer's office to keep moving. What I think what Mr. Gears is trying to do with this is put into place a position where you have support. When a new president of council comes in, I'm pretty sure we're going to have a new president of council here soon. And potentially when other things change, and maybe Joe Gears isn't here. He's been here in Stallworth and knows the project, or knows the process well. But if he's not here and you have a new president of council, and let's throw politics in there and let's put a new secretary in there also, it makes it a real challenge to really continue to thrive and have successful councils and a successful city. And that's the only reason that quite frankly, the auditor got involved in this situation. Now, Noah and the auditor, and we've talked about, okay, what are the best ways, best moves to make it so that we can bring the resources of this local municipality to the people? And that's what the goal is behind this move. Now, whether council needs to approve this position, I have concerns with that because it is part of my administrative staff. It is a person that's working in the HR department. It's very hard to manage a person when you look at it and say, well, I have some control and some power over this, but when it comes down to it, I've got to get approval from council. It's going to be, that's sort of, and maybe Noah can speak to that in other HR situations, but as an appointed person, it makes it a much bigger challenge to find the right person who everybody's going to be happy with, when you've got to justify they're being hired to 7 people. Plus, quite frankly, the president of council has to agree to this person, and the clerk of council has to. It makes it a little bit harder. But the whole goal, the whole theory and the whole goal behind this was to provide structure that's there consistently through the elections, through the politics. And you can say, well, this is a political position and you're taking it away from the Democrats or you're taking it away from the Republicans. Well, you got to think bigger than that, I think, and what's best for the city. And yes, we're a statutory city and there's tons of politics that we can't get away from, but there are certain areas where we can run it like a business and run it efficiently and effectively. And that's sort of what I think the goal of this position is to put somebody in there that will be there through those transitions as an appointed person. And there's still a lot of ability to make changes to those appointed positions, but that's the goal behind this. Now, the appointment part is, I would defer to Noah about, maybe he has a better understanding of how that, maybe a pitfall of that could be, you know.
If I could, just real quick. I mean, whether it's the best way or worst way to look at it, I don't know, but, I mean, we are in the politics game here, and it's an angle we do have to look at. Unfortunately, even though we're trying to all work together regardless of our party and all that, that's what I like to do. Mm-hmm. Work together, make things happen. But what we do have to do as well, and I believe it is our duty, to do our due diligence for the people is this something like Mr. Braden's thinking that we take away from the elected officials, that is their privilege? If you have a majority on council, you get to pick essentially, your clerk, and then the clerk has hiring power. That's one of them things that comes with the privileges of being elected or having majority, and it's weighing the options of, okay, is this something we're willing to get rid of or something we're willing to give up? I mean, it's something we have to look at. I mean, whether it's the best or the worst way, I think. And then, at the same hand is, well, coming to 7 people and trying to get somebody hired. At the same time, a future council could look at it, well, in the future mayor, whoever, that generation down the line, well, man, I'd really like to make sure I can get the right person I want here. But now we don't have a say and we got to rely on the mayor or whatever. I think that could still kind of take a certain aspect away and make it harder on council in certain ways, where it can make it harder on you in certain ways there. I mean, it's unfortunate that there is politics involved with the situation, but, I'm kind of leaning towards kind of what Councilman Braden's saying of, let's slow it down, maybe it's something to look at there.
Let me take it a little farther. I mean, politics don't matter, but I think it does matter, because what if this full-time position, we put somebody in there that's full-time, and that means that, whoever the clerk in and out, it doesn't matter, that's a full-time position. What if there's animosity there? What if that person has an issue? a previous issue or a new, and actually tries to make it harder. I mean, I could see that person making it difficult for the clerk. Or maybe, I mean, let's just go a step further, even sabotage. I see an issue there that could arise, so I don't like it.
Can I interject?
That's just a personal opinion.
Let me just interject one thing here. This is our fourth person in 3 years. This role, as Mayor Schneider has alluded, there are very time-sensitive documents that have to be processed and sent to the county auditor. You can't be late with that. And having to train someone over and over and over again, new person, just increases the potential of something happening, something not being processed in a timely manner. And I think that the goal here, talking with Jim, is to have someone there on a full-time basis so that we're not doing this all the time. You don't see what Mr. Gears has to do. I mean, I think he's had to take PTO days for the last, I don't know how many.
Every other Friday.
Yeah, every other Friday, just to come in here and to get the packet together, which is a timely process, and to get all the information compiled and to count. So what I'm saying is, I think by having this full-time position is going to alleviate that, and that we don't have to train someone, every few months, because this, like I said, this is number 4, this is the 4th person that I would have in 3 years. And there's a lot of headaches for that, when you have to, someone has no idea what they're doing. And we've even gotten to the point where we're writing out, the procedures, but that's you put it in writing, but that's a whole different thing. You still got to train this person and all the things that go in and out of the office. So just want to add that to the conversation. Mrs. Hoover.
I have a comment and then a question. While I do get what you're talking about, but I feel like if we're at the point of someone sabotaging, that is so egregious that would just be dealt with. And so for me, I'm not as...
Disagree.
Okay.
I disagree.
That just makes me sad. Not just that is a concern. I guess one of my question is, we're talking about it being an appointment. Once they're appointed, they are an employee, correct? An employee at will?
They're an employee of the city.
Okay, so they would carry on until they chose to leave, or there was an issue and they needed to be, they would be fired, right? It wouldn't be something that we would be looking at it's a permanent appointment.
Just be a union position, right? Or no? No union, not union.
Nope.
Which makes it easier to fire.
Okay, easier to get rid of. Okay, well, I was a little worried about that, but okay,
for
that makes
me,
it better.
I was in the office with Lisa quite a bit when she was first hired, and the learning curve is so ridiculous, and the chaos in that office was just not being able to find files and to think about that happening every 2 years, because I've been in this position for just over a year, and I'm just now so I know what I'm doing, just now, right? And so if we have an expectation that someone's gonna have to learn that position every 2 years, how much that slows down the important work that we need to be doing. So I agree that it's not perfect, that sort of split job, but I think that the benefits of having the continuity, having someone, I feel like there are enough checks and balances as an employee that if there is animosity between the clerk and the secretary, that it would be handled administratively. It would be handled through HR. It would be handled with the mayor. It would be handled. Because what's the difference between that position and, the water department and the secretary not liking each other and there being animosity? Like, is she gonna sabotage?
Yeah, can we get clarification on appointed position and how?
Mr. Moore?
Thanks. Well, this is an at-will employee, so it could be fired at any time by the mayor, the way, under either version of the ordinance by the mayor. I just want to offer, I have I had experience on council in the majority and the minority. I had the experience of being the law director when we had to knew everybody trying to figure out what council does. When Mr. Miracle was new, we had new clerk, new secretary, new council majority. And I am all in favor of having a full-time person who has, at least in theory, some continuity in that position. Having a part-time, refilling a part-time position, even if you've got a clerk who's doing, well, when you have a clerk who's doing a bad job, that's happened too, but if you had a secretary of the clerk who's doing a bad job, who's not getting it, who's just confusing things, you can say, oh, we'll get rid of them, but hiring somebody new is an ordeal. Finding somebody who's willing to take that job, and the idea that it's going to be a career is non-existent. Having a full-time position is great. If council over the next several months wants to talk about, well, let's just make this a full-time council position and the mayor can do whatever he wants to over an HR, whatever. There's other alternatives to look at, but right now you have this position in front of you, and this is the way to get somebody in that office. It's the way that I think is a good way forward. I will also say that I have been in the majority and had a secretary of the clerk of council who was really trying to sabotage me. I have been in the minority and had a secretary of the clerk of council who was really trying to sabotage what we were trying to do. The politics happen, and I think that given the increasing number of things the clerk of council is responsible, or the secretary's office, that office is responsible for, and giving the increased importance of just the kind of, here, this paper has to go, here's got to be stamped right, but move it more of a professional position with some continuity is a huge, huge thing. It's far more important than anything else. And so, right today, I think this is the way forward. And again, as I mentioned early on, council can always change this. Especially if you got 6 votes, you can override a veto. Worst comes to worst. I mean, if it's really that bad, council creates these positions, council can eliminate these positions. So, but right now, I don't foresee, I personally, I look at this and I'm like, wait a minute, council gets to have a voice in this. And that may become an issue, but I would say today, regardless of whether it's got council, kind of advice and consent for the appointment or it doesn't, you got something on the table now. Because Joe, how long is it going to, I wonder how many months is it going to take to find somebody else to come in at a 25-hour-a-week kind of job? It's a hard thing to get. And then another 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get them up to speed where, we're making sure that things are getting advertised and put in the right place. I mean, we had the second lawsuit with the Volkswagen folks because the ordinance and the paperwork that it was advertised was not in council's files. That's why that got filed, is because that paperwork was not taken care of when that ordinance was passed. And so having those kinds of things taken care of, having the public records request dealt with, having the minutes taken, all those kinds of things, those are all huge things and things that are much more likely to get us in trouble than they were 15, 20, 30 years ago when this kind of system was set up. So I would say whatever it is, if you can, make a decision tonight and get somebody in there full time. But having a full-time position is a huge, huge thing.
Anyone else? Noah, did you want to add anything?
Well, I don't know if it's so much adding anything as reiterating some of the things that everybody has already said. I do see that there are potential problems with the way this would be structured, but this does deal with the actual problem that we have now, which is that repeated vacancy in there, that steep learning curve. And we've seen that when there are issues in the Secretary of the Clerk of Council's office, that does spill out into the rest of the organization. That means that ordinances don't make it down to the auditor's office and appropriations don't get adjusted. That holds up our projects. It means that I can't sign contracts in time because I don't have the final ordinance authorizing me to sign some contracts. So it delays things, it slows us down, it causes headaches. The fact that the position has only been 25 hours a week leads a lot of people over here to my office knocking on the door saying, well, where's the Clerk of Council's office? And the answer is often, they're not there. So having that full-time position would be an enormous benefit. I would also, reiterate that this isn't a fiduciary position that we're talking about. This isn't somebody who's giving advice in that to council. This is somebody who is doing the paperwork, making sure things are getting mailed when they need to get mailed, making sure things are getting on the council agenda. It is a lot of paperwork, it's important paperwork, but it's not so inextricably tied to advising council members. You know, that's more of the clerk's role there. So council does still have that very important appointment. And just from a logistics standpoint, if you're talking about taking an employee and we sit them down on day one and say, you have 8 bosses, some people are going to get kind of ashen when they hear that. And it will make it really complicated because they're not going to ever understand fully who is it that they actually report to. So for me, when I'm looking at it from an HR standpoint, telling somebody, this is your supervisor, this is who you report to, is really important, and it's a benefit to that employee. So those would be my comments on it.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Anyone else? Any other comments or questions? Any direction?
I feel like I'm on the losing side of this. Or do I feel like I'm losing here?
I'll make a motion to pass to declare an emergency and pass I'm sorry, is it a resolution or ordinance?
It's an ordinance, but that wouldn't be in this.
Your committee of the whole.
Oh, we're committee of the whole. Okay, so then what do we need to do?
Make a motion to put it on the agenda.
Motion, put it on the agenda for.
I don't think we even motion, it's just
Okay.
decide to put it on the agenda.
Feel like I'm, you know,
You just decide.
we're in a democracy,
I guess the
so obviously, we get to vote, and, I feel like I'm on the losing side here, and, administration wants it, and I don't want to fight against that, but I mean,
No, what the question was.
there's several things
Which way we're
that
gonna
when
go with this.
we get the majority, that we've done here, that, I feel like that may be undone, so, and I'm just, giving my opinion, so. But I don't want to, if we're thinking this is going to be better, then great, but I see a conflict of interest. I think someone had just said that there has been a conflict of interest in the past, so I mean, that kind of makes my point, but,
I think
that's okay.
This is a solution for right now, for this year.
Okay.
And then if your concerns, I think, when we get to that point,
Deal with it when we get the majority.
yeah. But I think right now, administration-wise,
I mean, I'm okay, I mean, I get it. Hey, humble in defeat, that's how
Real quick.
it works.
Mr. Braden, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Moore had these. These are the original ordinance that Mr. Stith requested. These do not require council's approval for the position. That's one way. So when you go to the council meeting, somebody would make a motion to amend the agenda and add this ordinance onto the agenda, then you would vote for it. This is one way.
But that's the old one.
This is the
Oh, so-
original,
okay.
the original. Neither are old or new right now.
All right.
This is the original. Now, we also have copies of the amended, which added council's approval required. So that is really a question to the committee of the whole right now, is if you are going to move forward, which way are you going to move forward?
So if I could, just real quick, give
Or
my 2
if you're
cents.
going to move forward
I
at all.
think-
Or if you're going to move forward.
I think the best way to move forward with keeping it all whole, this person still has one person they report to, and that. I think council's approval is necessary. I work at school, I coach sports. I get hired I just got hired today for a job. I'm not going to say, well, I don't know if I'm allowed yet. But I just got hired today for a job.
Congratulations.
On school board approval.
Yeah.
School board's got to approve it before I can get paid, So it's just the way it is, I know how it works, and I think that one, with the council approval, as well as the mayor picking who it is, appointing, and we approve, I think that's the best way to go for continuity for the job that needs done, continuity for the city and council as a whole, to stay involved in the mix. I think that's the best route. That's personally me. I will vote for that one, the other one, I don't think so.
Well, it also feels, this is a much more professional position. I mean, because right now, my 19-year-old makes more than this, working at J. Crew.
Looks like you win.
So, if it's a more professional position, it's a full-time position, I feel like we're going to have a level of professionalism that, again, maybe I'm high in the sky, that I think that would mitigate some of that sabotage thing. Because this is their
You want to hold
job.
on?
Politics.
So which way, What was,
I don't know which, did we determine which way we were going? Or if we're going?
I feel like they determined, Mr. Mayor.
Can we make can I make a motion to recommend out?
no, we don't need any motion.
No motion.
We got to decide on the ordinance, we can't do a straw poll.
State which one.
We don't do a straw poll. We'll state which one, and we close the committee of the whole, then when we're in the meeting, then you make a motion.
Which one you want, yeah.
So I would request the amended version with the mayor appointed and council approval,
That's where my head's at.
as opposed to the one that's simply.
Is that where everybody's head's at?
Yes, obviously, I'm in the best position to make a comment on this thing, having arrived several minutes ago, which I apologize for. I have been out of the country until yesterday, so I'm just getting caught up. But I'm familiar with it. I looked at it earlier today, and I think the amended one seems like
That's what it's,
a logical thing for me.
I mean, it still does everything needed.
Yep, I think
Okay.
it's fine with me.
Okay. Having said that, then we will, anybody else? Before we go? Okay. Then the committee of the whole will adjourn.